Hello, in today's lesson we are looking at genetic traits part 2. What you're going to be doing is you're going to be determining the possible phenotype and genotypes outcomes that could occur using Punnett squares. So last class we started looking at Punnett squares and how we can predict what the offspring might end up with depending on the parent's genotype. So remember, the genotype is the letters that we use to represent what is in the genes. What you need to do right now is you need to write down your objective on page 33, okay? And then we'll do the science starter, and if you could please set up a half-page Cornell notes, that would be wonderful. You may or may not have a Punnett square check at the beginning of next class. I have not decided yet if we're going to do that. To be successful in today's lesson, and technically from yesterday's lesson as well, what you need to be able to do, you need to be able to distinguish between dominant and recessive traits. Okay, you need to be able to differentiate between heterozygous and homozygous pairs of alleles. So these are very important, the difference between the two. If you want to remember, heterozygous means different. So when we are looking at our alleles, we have one dominant, one recessive. Whereas homozygous is the same, two dominant or two recessive, okay? You can determine the phenotype of an organism using its genotype. So you're going to be doing Mendelian monsters to do this. And you can predict which genotypes will result from a mating pair using a Punnett square. With all of that, you are making a Mendelian monster and you're going to mate it. So what I recommend is that you do actually watch this Brain Pop video. I'll have the whole presentation on Google Classroom as well. Go in and have a look at it. It goes through the Mendelian genetics. And we have a few definitions to add to our notebook on page 33 right after this video, okay? So the first definition that you need to put in is Mendelian traits. Remember, Mendelian traits, this part goes into the key terms, or the main ideas column, the small one to the left, and then the definition goes into the notes section. Mendelian traits are traits that are controlled by one gene only. A couple of examples, whether you have a widow's peak or not, whether you have a bent little finger or a straight little finger. Do you have hair on your mid-digit knuckles? Okay, it's quite a dominant trait, so most of you will probably have it. Do you have curly hair or straight hair? Dark hair, well, dark hair and light hair are not exactly good examples. Same with eyes. Okay, can you curl your tongue or not curl your tongue? Those are all examples of Mendelian traits which are controlled by one gene. Remember to pause the video along the way whenever you need so that you can write down your notes. Okay, a couple more examples of Mendelian traits. You do not need to copy this into your notebooks, but this is just a few examples. Your blood type, okay? Sickle cell anemia, whether you have it or not. Albinism, which is where you have a lack of pigmentation in your skin. And brachydactyly, which is the shortness of fingers or toes over here. Okay, not all of your fingers and toes will be short, but some of them will be. Okay, the next set of notes is multi-gene traits, and this is when a combination of multiple genes is the result of the phenotype that you see. And the best examples that we have are hair color and eye color. You will notice that I do use my Canadian spelling with a U in color. For the American spelling, just get rid of the U. Determining the sex is the last one that we're going to put in our notes. This is technically a Mendelian trait, although it's not a gene, it's actually an entire chromosome that decides whether you are male or female. So every single person will receive one X chromosome from their mother. Okay, in the egg, you'll notice in the diagram here, the egg represents the female chromosome, and the X represents the female chromosome, and it is inherited by the egg. And then the Y represents the male chromosome that comes from the sperm, okay? Sperm from your father can either give you X chromosome, which means that the child will then be a girl, or the sperm from the father can be a Y chromosome, meaning that the child will be a boy. Okay, it is the Y chromosome that determines whether or not you are male or female. If you have some time in our station before we switch, I would recommend that you do some practice prep for the check for Punnett square problems. Okay, you can do a few of these. Choose 2, I would say, or try all 3. And you can do you won't have space on this output page, but you can always do them at the bottom of your input page on 33. And then we are going to do an approaches to learning self-assessment. So if you have not got time in this station at the end of class before you leave, you do need to complete your approaches to learning self-assessment and hand it in. Please rate yourself honestly in the 3 categories of organization, time management, and behavior. Do you consistently do the action, which means pretty much always? Maybe only once that you forgot to, okay? Do you sometimes do it where it's, I'd say between kind of like 50 and 80% of the time you do it? Or do you rarely demonstrate this behavior, less than 50% of the time? All right, that is it. Once you're done this lesson, please do your check and then wait until we move on to the next lesson. You are always welcome to go into the full presentation and go to the extensions as well. Okay, so once you're done, you can go on to extensions until we move.